A Russian man cries after hearing a Filipino song he doesn't understand. Within days, millions are crying with him. This is the true story of how music united two worlds without saying a word. On a bitter February night in 2023, in a city known more for its silence than its sentiment, a 52-year-old Russian factory worker named Alexei Petrov found himself weeping over a video he didn't understand. It wasn't death or heartbreak that broke him open. It was a song, a simple Filipino ballad called Anak, sung in a language he couldn't speak, from a place he couldn't even find on a map. While others celebrated Valentine's Day with roses and red wine, Alexei sat alone in his modest flat in Novosibirsk, Russia, overcome by something deeper. He didn't know why the melody cut through him like a knife, or why the lyrics, though foreign, felt like they'd been written about his life. What he did know was that within days, his tearful reaction would be viewed over 12 million times, and the chain reaction that followed would reach 2 nations, 3 generations, and the frozen emotional core of millions of people who didn't know they needed saving. Alexei's life was built on repetition, 12-hour shifts at a parts factory, the hiss of steam, the clanging of metal, the cold silence of Siberian dawns. He hadn't traveled beyond Kazakhstan. He hadn't spoken to his daughter in 4 months. He didn't dislike his life, but it felt like an old coat he wore out of habit, functional, familiar, and long since frayed at the seams. He wasn't the kind of man who cried at music videos. He wasn't the kind of man who cried at all. Yet on that particular morning, sometime around 4 a.m., he stumbled on a viral video. A man in a smoky Moscow karaoke bar, breaking down halfway through a song in what looked like Tagalog. The man's voice cracked, not out of showmanship, but something raw and real. And Alexei, for reasons he couldn't explain, felt something stir inside him, something ancient and aching that he thought he'd buried years ago beneath routine and silence. He almost scrolled past it. The video looked like another clickbait clip designed for quick laughs or cheap sympathy. But the comment section stopped him cold. Russian users, men and women alike, were leaving messages like confessions. I haven't spoken to my father in 7 years. I'm calling him today. I don't understand a word, but this song broke me. Why do I feel like this is about me? Alexei clicked the title Anak by Freddie Aguilar. He didn't recognize the name. He didn't know the Philippines had ballads like this. He expected overproduction or cheesy lyrics, but what he found was an acoustic guitar and a voice filled with sorrow and strength. No background effects. No embellishment. Just a man telling a story through song, and telling it so honestly, it reached across borders, cultures, and decades to find the heart of a man in the middle of a Russian winter who thought his story was too ordinary to be moved by music. The translation came in bits and pieces, buried in the comments. The song told the story of a child who had wandered, who had disobeyed, who had left home and returned only to find unconditional love still waiting. As he read the lyrics slowly, carefully, Alexei felt a strange tightening in his chest. He had never disappointed his parents in any dramatic way, but life had happened. Marriage, divorce, lost friendships, and growing distance from his only daughter, Katya. Not from anger, not from failure, but from time. He realized how much he had missed. Birthdays, conversations, ordinary moments. He picked up his phone. His hand shook as he pressed her number. When she answered, sleepy and confused, all he said was, "I just wanted to hear your voice." That was the moment that broke them both open. The tears came silently. Then the words followed. "I miss you. I miss you too." They talked until sunrise, laughing and crying about everything and nothing. After the call, he did something he never imagined he would. He turned on his laptop camera, found the instrumental version of Anak, and sang. The words were difficult. The pronunciation was awkward, but he didn't care. He sang the song the best he could, halting Tagalog lyrics read from a comment section, matched with a voice that wasn't trained, but honest. He wasn't trying to go viral. He was trying to remember what it felt like to feel. He uploaded the video to his small YouTube channel with just one line in the caption. For every parent and child who forgot how to talk, this song is a bridge. Then he went to sleep. 14 hours later, he woke up to nearly 1,000 notifications. His face went pale as the numbers rolled in: views, shares, comments, messages. Something had cracked open, not just in him, but in everyone who watched a Russian man stumble through a Filipino song and somehow find his way back to his own heart. The internet, often divided by politics and outrage, became a place of healing. Russians flooded the comments. Some shared their own stories of silence between parent and child. Others uploaded their own covers of Anak, sung in tears and thick accents. Factory workers, soldiers, grandmothers. It wasn't polished. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. And it was spreading. YouTube's algorithm began cross-recommending Filipino and Russian videos. In the comments, Tagalog speakers welcomed them with warmth. You sing it with an accent, but you feel it with truth. This song made my father cry too. Welcome to Filipino emotion. We cry together. A song written in 1978 had turned into a vessel of connection in 2023. It was no longer just music. It was medicine for something no one had language for until now. And Alexei, still stunned, realized he had accidentally started a movement. One built not on popularity, but pain, and the courage to finally give it a voice. The wave didn't stop. Russian journalists began calling it the Manila effect, a cultural phenomenon sparked not by politics, not by propaganda, but by a song about a lost child and a parent's love. Think pieces appeared on national news sites, exploring why this one Filipino ballad resonated so deeply with Russians. The conclusion was always the same: emotion. For generations, Russians had been taught to endure, to internalize, to be strong. Emotion was reserved for literature, not living. But in Filipino culture, emotion wasn't hidden. It was sung, shared, celebrated. And somehow, the Russian soul, long buried under history and silence, had found an unlikely mirror in the warmth of a Southeast Asian melody. One journalist wrote, "We're not crying over a foreign song. We're remembering what it means to feel." The truth hit harder than politics ever could. Music had done what diplomacy could not. It made people see each other. The cultural spark turned into a flame. By late spring, the Philippine embassy in Moscow was flooded with emails, some from academics, some from regular citizens, asking about Tagalog lessons, music translation programs, even travel visas to Manila. One letter read, "I want to understand the language of the song that helped me speak to my son again." It wasn't just curiosity, it was hunger. A hunger to connect, to feel more. Maria Santos, the embassy's cultural affairs officer, saw the opportunity immediately. She reached out to Alexei, asking if he'd consider coming to the Philippines. Not for a concert, not for a speech, but to help build a real bridge. A cultural exchange between Filipino musicians and Russian listeners. Without hesitation, he said yes. He'd never left Russia before, never been on a plane, never heard of Quezon City. But he knew the power of one song. And if that song could bring him back to his daughter, maybe it could bring two nations closer than anyone thought possible. The moment Alexei stepped off the plane in Manila, he was overwhelmed. The air was thick, the colors loud, the warmth startling. It was as if everything he had ever known had been turned upside down and filled with light. The documentary crew waiting for him had been tracking the story since it broke. Young Filipino journalists, eager to capture the unlikely journey of a Russian factory worker, transformed by a song older than he realized. They took him to a modest house in Quezon City. Inside, waiting patiently, was Freddie Aguilar, the man who wrote Anak over 4 decades ago in the quiet heartbreak of his youth. He was now 70, with gentle eyes and the same guitar that had started it all. They sat across from each other, one Filipino, one Russian. 2 fathers, 2 men who had failed, loved, lost, and learned. Neither needed to speak the other's language. Their shared silence was enough to say, "You understand." Freddie spoke through a translator, but his words needed no explaining. "I wrote Anak when I was ashamed of who I had become. I had disobeyed my parents. I had disappointed them. Writing that song was my way of coming home." Alexei, his voice shaking, replied, "Your song helped me call my daughter. We hadn't talked, not because of anger, but because we forgot how. Freddie reached across the table and took Alexei's hand. "Then it did its job," he said. "Because love doesn't disappear. It just gets quiet. And sometimes we need music to make it loud again." The room was silent. Not the awkward kind. The kind that feels sacred. Then, gently, Freddie picked up his guitar. He played the opening chords. Alexei joined in, singing the Tagalog lyrics in his thick Russian accent. And though neither man sang perfectly, something perfect happened. Behind the cameras, the crew was crying. And for once, no one tried to hide it. What started as a quiet reunion between artist and listener soon bloomed into something bigger. The cultural center of the Philippines invited both men to speak at a public event. But what they proposed instead was more daring. A concert. One that would unite both cultures, one song at a time. 50 Russian singers, many of whom had gone viral singing Anak and other Filipino ballads, would be invited to perform in Manila. 50 Filipino musicians would share the stage. The project would be called Songs Without Borders. There would be no flags, no anthems, no speeches. Just music. Just connection. Word spread quickly. Tickets sold out within hours. Sponsors lined up. But the goal remained clear. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about soul. Two nations, 7,000 kilometers apart, about to sing together in languages they barely knew, but emotions they shared completely. On the night of the concert, the cultural center pulsed with anticipation. The venue had hosted world-class performances, but never one quite like this. When Alexei stepped onto the stage, the audience hushed. He stood under the lights, not as a celebrity, not as a performer, but as a man who once cried alone in his kitchen, and now stood in front of thousands to say thank you. He took a breath and addressed the crowd, in carefully practiced Tagalog he had spent 4 months learning. "Salamat pa. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the love." The room erupted. When he began singing Anak, his voice trembled, but didn't falter. The Filipino orchestra swelled behind him. And then, something unexpected happened. The entire audience began singing with him. Not as backup, but as partners. 3,000 voices. One song. A Russian man leading a Filipino crowd through a ballad that had long ago become their national soul. But the real miracle was not in Manila. It was in Moscow, Novosibirsk, and St. Petersburg. Russians, watching the concert live-streamed in bars, living rooms, and buses, began to sing too. Karaoke bars paused their playlists. Highway drivers pulled over. People across Russia joined in, fumbling through the Tagalog chorus, tears in their eyes. For the first time in modern history, two nations not bound by trade or treaties found unity through melody. This wasn't a concert. It was a communion. In kitchens, in cars, in quiet hearts across 2 continents, a decades-old Filipino song became a shared language. And when the final note faded, there was no applause. Not immediately. Just breath. Just awe. Then, all at once, the kind of applause that feels like thunder, not for performance, but for healing. In the weeks that followed, the governments of Russia and the Philippines announced a formal cultural exchange. There would be language programs taught through music. Music festivals with joint performances. Choirs would be invited to cross borders not to compete, but to collaborate. But the truth was, the real agreement had already been made, not in embassies or conference rooms, but in bedrooms and phone calls. In messages sent between Russian sons and Filipino strangers. In the quiet dignity of men learning how to say, "I miss you" through song. In the way music made old wounds speak and new connections grow. What started as one man's tearful reaction had become a nationwide release. And Alexei? He returned home to his factory job. Still humble, still quiet, but different. Because now, every Sunday, he video called his daughter. Sometimes, they didn't even talk. They just sang Filipino songs, Russian ballads, lullabies from a time before silence settled in. The impact went deeper than anyone predicted. Russian therapists began using Anak in family counseling sessions. Schools played it in music class alongside Pushkin and Tchaikovsky. Karaoke bars saw a 300% increase in Filipino songs requested. And perhaps most beautifully, Filipinos working in Russia, nurses, caregivers, engineers, began to notice a shift. Where before they were treated with polite detachment, now they were met with curiosity, even reverence. One Filipino nurse in Moscow said, "Before, when I sang during my shift, they thought I was being unprofessional. Now, they ask me to teach them. They say my singing makes the hospital feel less cold." What Freddie Aguilar had written as a personal reckoning had become a cultural key, unlocking a gentleness in a country long taught to survive through silence. And through that unlocking, friendships formed, communities connected, and strangers began to see each other not through flags or language, but through shared longing. A small monument was unveiled in Gorky Park that fall, a dove carved in stone, wings open, held by two hands reaching from opposite sides. On the base, engraved in both Tagalog and Russian, Anak, Hindi kita malalamutan. Child, I will never forget you. Tourists paused to read it. Children asked their parents what it meant. And slowly, the story of Anak became more than a viral moment. It became a lesson. That pain, when voiced, becomes power. That vulnerability, when shared, becomes strength. That two nations with little shared history could find each other not through deals or declarations, but through a father's song to his child. That melody could build what history had never tried to: emotional diplomacy. Not politics, not propaganda, just people, broken, beautiful, and brave, finding each other through a song. Freddie Aguilar, now older and slower in movement, said in an interview months later, "I never imagined my song would leave the Philippines. I wrote it to make peace with myself. I didn't know it would make peace between strangers." He smiled, looking out the window at a street filled with students humming his melody. But that's the thing about music. Once it's sung, it belongs to everyone who needs it. And that, perhaps, was the final gift of this story. Not fame, not glory, but the reminder that we are never as far apart as we think. That under every flag, behind every accent, inside every person, is a song waiting to be heard. And sometimes, it only takes one man crying in his kitchen to remind the world how to listen again. Alexei didn't return home as a celebrity. There were no parades, no red carpets. He returned to the same apartment, the same job, the same quiet streets of Novosibirsk. But everything inside him had shifted. His co-workers, once distant, now asked him what Tagalog words meant. The cafeteria radio, usually tuned to Russian news, sometimes played Anak. A teenager from his neighborhood knocked on his door to ask if he could learn the song properly for his school performance. Alexei smiled and offered to teach him the lyrics the way he learned them, by feeling, not just pronunciation. Something profound had happened that no headline could fully capture. He had become a vessel of understanding between two cultures. And though his daily routine didn't change, the meaning behind it did. The factory noise didn't drown him out anymore. It was simply background to the melody now playing inside him, a reminder that he mattered. That his voice, broken as it was, had made a difference. Back in the Philippines, the ripples continued. Music academies began studying Anak not just as a folk classic, but as a global case study in emotional universality. Schools added it to curricula, not only for performance but for discussion. What makes a song cross oceans? Why did this one touch Russian hearts? Cultural festivals now included Russian choirs performing Filipino songs, and vice versa. Student exchange programs emerged where young Russians and Filipinos composed original songs together. A new genre started forming, hybrid ballads blending Tagalog and Russian verses. One group of teenagers from Davao and Moscow collaborated online and released a song called Mga Alaala Memories, with a verse about snow and another about monsoons, yet perfectly in tune. Music, once separated by thousands of miles, now lived in a shared language of emotion. The lyrics didn't have to be perfect. The feeling did. And the feeling was unmistakable: connection. A kind of unity that no politics, history, or borders had managed to achieve. International media caught on slowly at first, then all at once. Features aired on BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, and NHK, all asking the same question: How did a 45-year-old Filipino song ignite a cultural bridge between Russia and Southeast Asia? Think tanks had no answers. Artists did. They simply said, because it was honest. Anak didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. It didn't try to impress. It told the truth. And that's what had been missing. The world had plenty of content. Plenty of noise. But very few truths. Anak was one of them. Raw. Regretful. Loving. Redemptive. And because of that, people listened. Not just with ears, but with memory. With forgiveness. With the kind of silence that only follows something sacred. The documentary made about Alexei's journey was nominated for international awards, but he never attended the ceremonies. He was home, playing guitar with his daughter over video call, teaching her Tagalog, one syllable at a time, between Russian lullabies. The monument in Gorky Park became a pilgrimage site of sorts. It wasn't grand or even widely advertised, but those who knew the story came quietly. Filipinos on vacation in Moscow left flowers and handwritten lyrics. Russians sat on the nearby bench and listened to Anak on their headphones, eyes closed. One day, a video surfaced of a group of Russian teenagers sitting by the monument, strumming guitars and trying to sing By and Co. They didn't get all the words right, but they got the emotion. That video made its way back to the Philippines, where students from Quezon City responded with their own cover of a Russian folk song. No translation needed. The songs were enough. A musical dialogue had begun, free of ego or correction, rooted not in performance but presence. And the world watched in quiet awe, realizing they weren't witnessing a trend, but a transformation. Music was becoming diplomacy, but not the kind that required treaties, only tears and truth. Alexei was invited to speak at universities and cultural forums, but he turned most down. He believed the story was never really his. The song did the work, he often said. I just listened. Yet one invitation caught his heart. A small art school in St. Petersburg asked if he would come speak to their students. When he arrived, he was surprised to see not just musicians, but poets, dancers, and painters. They didn't want tips. They wanted to understand how vulnerability had changed him. He told them he didn't know how to be vulnerable before, that he had always been taught to carry pain like a secret, until he sang. And in singing, he realized something fundamental, that humans are not meant to carry sorrow in silence. They are meant to harmonize it. That one voice can crack open another. And that sometimes healing doesn't sound like therapy. It sounds like a guitar, a foreign language, and the word Anak, child. Katya, Alexei's daughter, came home that Christmas. It was the first time in 4 years. The apartment was still small, still plain, but it had changed too. There were now sticky notes on the fridge with Tagalog words. A guitar leaned against the wall, and a printed photo of Alexei and Freddie Aguilar hung quietly above the dinner table. They didn't need decorations. The joy was in being together. They sang that night. Katya on melody, Alexei fumbling through chords. They laughed. They cried. Not because of any dramatic revelation, but because time, once lost, was now given back to them, one note at a time. That Christmas, Alexei gave his daughter a letter. Inside it, just 2 sentences, "Thank you for not giving up on me. The song reminded me how to find you again." And that was the gift. Not wrapped in ribbon, but in reconciliation. A reminder that music, at its best, doesn't entertain. It rebuilds what we thought was gone. Years later, when Alexei passed away quietly in his sleep, thousands of people across Russia and the Philippines mourned. His story had reached farther than he'd ever known. But more than tributes, more than flowers, what echoed loudest was the song. Anak trended again that week, this time not because of a viral video, but because people remembered what it had done. In Manila, Freddie Aguilar performed it live in tribute, pausing at the final verse. His voice cracked, not because of age, because of love, because of legacy, because somewhere in Siberia, a man had heard his song and decided to try again. In that moment, the world didn't feel so big. Grief didn't feel so lonely. And music didn't feel like sound. It felt like memory. Shared. Passed down. Still alive. still singing. The cultural bridge didn't end. It evolved. Schools across both countries now offered elective courses in cross-cultural music. Filipino lullabies were taught alongside Russian ballads. Joint music festivals became annual events, no longer headlines, but expected. A new generation grew up thinking it was normal for a Filipino choir to sing Tchaikovsky and for a Russian violinist to play Paraiso. The novelty had faded, but the beauty remained. This was no longer about two nations healing. It was about two nations growing, together, through chorus, through rhythm, through stories once buried, now sung aloud. Music wasn't the background anymore. It was the foundation, the thread that tied different hearts into one voice. And that voice, once sparked by a single man's tears, now echoed in classrooms, concert halls, and quiet rooms where people dared, for the first time, to sing their truth. Historians would later write about it as a soft revolution, one that didn't need protests or politics, only a guitar and the courage to cry. But for those who lived it, it wasn't a revolution. It was a remembering of what it meant to feel, to forgive, to speak without knowing all the words. It was never about understanding the lyrics. It was about understanding the feeling behind them. And when that happens, when one culture listens to another not to critique, but to connect, something ancient and beautiful returns. The kind of connection that doesn't need translation. Only honesty. And the willingness to say, I see you. I hear you. I am you. At the heart of it all was Anak. A song written in a Manila bedroom by a young man full of regret. A song sung for decades by Filipinos around the world. And a song that, when heard by the right person at the right time, awakened something sleeping inside millions. Not because of melody alone, but because it told the truth that lives in all of us. We make mistakes. We drift. But we can always return. Love doesn't disappear. It just gets quiet. And music, real, honest music, has the power to make it loud again. That's what the Russians heard. That's what the Filipinos gave. And that's what the world, slowly and gently, began to understand. Today, in small towns and big cities, people still sing Anak. Not as a viral trend, but as a hymn, a memory, a bridge. In one choir performance in Berlin, Filipino and Russian children sang it together, their voices rising in imperfect harmony. The audience cried, not because of performance quality, but because the meaning lingered. Two children from opposite ends of the earth were telling the same story, and in that shared story, humanity felt a little less fragmented, a little more whole. That's the miracle of music. It travels where words can't. It remembers what we forget, and it carries us back to each other when we lose our way. The story of Alexei and Anak isn't just a story about a song. It's a story about listening. About what happens when someone finally says what we've all been trying to express. It's about the cracks in our hearts that only open when the right melody plays. And it's about the courage to follow that melody wherever it leads, even if it leads across borders, through grief, or into the arms of someone we thought we'd lost. This is the kind of story that doesn't end when the music stops. It lives on in the people who keep singing. And every time Anak is played, somewhere in the world, another quiet soul remembers, you are not alone. This is the story of how a Filipino song made a Russian cry, and how those tears became something more. A shared language, a cultural thaw, a healing. It was never about going viral, never about fame. It was about two fathers, two families, two nations remembering what music is really for. Not to entertain, but to awaken, to connect, to remind us that across language and landscape, pain is universal, and so is love. One song, two worlds, infinite connections. And that will always be enough to start a revolution of the heart.